Dear developers, stop listening to pros.
On the off chance that any developers may be watching this video, I put forth a simple proposition. Stop listening to competitive players quite so much. Stop designing your games around the experience of pro players. I may get a variety of responses. One I naturally anticipate is the classic, skill issue much? To which I say, cope and seethe. I can play Doom Eternal like complete crap all I want on Nightmare, and if I can still win, why does my gameplay even matter? For more serious, actual...
Well, here's the thing. This is going to be on a game-to-game basis. Obviously, he's probably going to be talking about like multiplayer games versus single-player games. I mean, granted, Doom Eternal does have a little thing of like multiplayer in there, but that's not really what it's known for, but I get what he's saying.
Answer, I'll say that being good at a game does not make you a good game designer.
Pro players often complain that the guys making decisions about Halo suck at their own game. It's true. I'm not that good at Halo.
Yep.
I'm really not that good at sniping. I'm not that good at anything in Halo except driving the Warthog. And I'm not that good on purpose.
A good player is a good designer, like a competitive eater is a good chef, or a porn addict is good at sex. All too often, I see streamers and people who play a game for a living come up with the absolute worst ideas ever, because ultimately, their experience does not match the majority of the players. Just a heads up, I may use terms like pro, competitive, and hardcore player interchangeably. It basically just means those at higher skill levels, the upper echelon. For an example, let me tell you a story. I'm mostly going to talk about this through my own experience with Halo, but I think much of my points apply to gaming at large. I want you to consider how this might be affecting your favorite game in a similar way. For a period,
I'm just curious to how much of this guy's opinion is going to be based on like maybe rank play versus pubs and games that do have SBMM versus games that don't have SBMM. So I'm just curious.
Maybe after 2009, it seemed that developers were doing everything they could to attract new players, casual players, unskilled players. Everything seemed to be shifting towards being able to reward people, even for sucking at the game. For example, Halo 4. Now, Halo 4 was greatly influenced by Call of Duty. Many of the features it borrowed over were ones that seemed intended to help people who suck. For example, random kill streak rewards. Randomness obviously takes away from the skill of a game, taking power away from the player.
I remember this in Halo 4. I don't really remember like getting too into it, like what do you call it? Like caring much about it because I just play with my friends or whatever. But I do remember what he's talking about, like the random kill streaks as like a player, like doing, I don't remember doing like, I think the ranked, I don't even know if there was a ranked thing in this, but I just did pubs and I thought the pubs were fun and getting like the random kill streak thing. I thought that was fun.
And putting it into the hands of an RNG system serves to level the playing field and narrow the skill gap. Weapons like the bolt shot put power into the hands of people from the moment they spawn. By giving them a shotgun in their pocket, the kill streaks and loadout system kill the fundamental aspect and avenue for skill expression of Halo. Seeking out weapons on the map. This is something that I know noobs complain about. They think it's unfair when they get killed by a rocket launcher, even though they had an equal opportunity to pick it up themselves. There was a ton of other bullshit like perks, instant respawns, grenade indicators that also serve to artificially boost those who simply aren't very good.
There's another push that we had with Halo 4, which was to make Halo...
What is it? What is this? What is this image on this little PowerPoint thing, dude? Oh my god, wheelchair Halo. Make Halo more accessible. Help new players find success. Contextualize our universe.
Halo a more accessible multiplayer experience. Historically, Halo's been very hardcore, and it's had
just as like a knee-jerk thing, wouldn't there be like, if you have something like this, wouldn't like just the knee-jerk reaction to be like, have like a ranked playlist and a public playlist where you just jump in and jump out.
A very steep learning curve that has turned off a lot of players. So we wanted to help new players find success. We wanted to give them opportunities in modes like Infinity Slayer to earn power weapons that they might never have got a chance to use in multiplayer before.
Halo 4's abandonment of much of the skill and creativity uniquely required in a Halo game naturally saw its population drop off a cliff.
Really? I had no idea, because I think I'm not exactly sure, but when I did play Halo 4, I played it for, I don't know, a couple months, at least like maybe 6 months or whatever. I didn't really pay attention to like the online stuff, so I would have no idea. I didn't know it like dropped off like hard because of that, because you had like a pocket shotgun, because of the random kill streak rewards or whatever. I mean, if that was the case, you know, you could have just like did what I said before, like have a what do you call it? Have a public playlist and then a ranked playlist where the rules are just different. You know, much the same way with Super Smash Melee, remember? Or any Super Smash game. You know, like you can play like your normal match with like, you can do it by stock or whatever, items on, or you can like modify the match thing and just play Final Destination items off or whatever, you know? Just give the player the option. What is so bad about that?
343 had to figure out something to fix things. The next game was Halo 5. With the marketing, they came out swinging with the multiplayer. They hammered home how the game was a return to classic Halo. Even starts were the talk of their marketing. They had a real hard-on for competitive gaming now. Besides the return of even starts, they spoke about how they'd abandoned many of the casual features introduced in Halo 4, such as loadouts and perks. It wasn't quite a return to classic Halo though. The new thing for Halo 5 was the advanced mobility. Nobody asked for it, but they had to do something new. What's relevant here is the fact that 343 had an internal pro team. They had professional players, tournament players, consulting them in the development of the game and the sandbox. Now, I think this isn't necessarily for the better. Just because they play a lot doesn't necessarily mean they know how to design a game better.
Yeah.
As I said before, their experience doesn't reflect the average players. I see so many bad opinions from people who play for hours a day, highlighting issues that only really matter for people who play for hours a day, supporting changes that would
Yeah, regular people just want to hop on with their friends and just play for like a couple hours, you know? That's it. That's all they want to do, you know? If they want to jump on ranked, they go do ranked. If they want to go do pubs and just relax and just go do pubs or whatever.
diminish the game for the average player. This happens in virtually every game. For example, it's not uncommon to see pros who think either Halo 5 or Halo 2, especially Halo 2, is the best Halo. For those who don't know, Halo 3 is the fan favorite game. It achieved the peak.
So I think what he's getting at is like a lot of the pros don't really think Halo 2 was the best Halo. They just think Halo 2 had the best rank system because there was no like skill-based matchmaking in it. You know, it was like 0 to 100. You win a couple matches, you go up. All your teammates are about on the same level. All your enemies are about on the same level. And then you just go up or whatever. But I'm just curious. Let me see.
Peak population for both the casual and competitive player base. It had the peak of Halo sales. By all accounts, it is the example for a good Halo game. For Halo 5, it'd be the advanced mobility and jumps that provided extra opportunities for skill expression that attracted some pros over. But it was pretty far gone from classic Halo. I do want to stress the people who prefer Halo 5 are a minority, but they do exist, and it is typically for the competitive multiplayer. The far more noteworthy group, the pros who prefer Halo 2. If you don't know, Halo 2 is just a less polished Halo 3. Halo 3 is basically a direct upgrade on Halo 2. I think Halo 2 fans are like the competitive players for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Although, I admit I wouldn't exactly know. I don't really play Smash Bros. Outside of parties. Just kidding, I don't go to parties. There is of course the nostalgia for Halo 2. It was an
Same.
innovative online game at a special time, and I can certainly understand that. I can also understand preferring the maps. Both Halo 2 and 3 have excellent maps. It's a close competition. But the reasons given for preferring Halo 2 to Halo 3 typically boil down to it being easier to shit on new players. For example, button
Probably.
combos. These are skillful combos you could execute to kill people quicker, basically. They were entirely unintentional, they weren't added by the developers. The battle rifle, the weapon pros adore the most, was basically the only useful non-power weapon in Halo 2. They slightly weakened it in 3, slowing its projectile, and many did consider it a downgrade. Don't get me wrong, it was still extremely powerful. It was still the utility weapon. It was just slightly less overpowered. Simply put, the crux of the argument you'll hear from pros is that Halo 3 favored team play and Halo 2 favored individual performance more. You know, games that allow greater individual performance and hero moments are more fun to watch. More fun to watch must therefore mean more fun to play. Now, that's how the argument goes.
And also, fun is going to be completely subjective from person to person. You know, what's fun for one person isn't necessarily going to be fun for another person. Like the solo versus team-based wins or whatever, like he's talking about, having like one person being able to like 1v5 a team is, you know, one person is going to have like a different experience and a different expectation when put in that situation. And like they're going to have a different what do you call it? Like reaction to seeing like, you know, as opposed to like someone or a couple people like maybe 3v5ing or 3v whatever, you know? It's going to be a different, I don't know, effect, I would say.
There is also a notable aspect of time to kill that factors into this. Lower
Yeah.
time to kills allow for greater individual performance. Some say a wider gap between average and optimal time to kill is better. This is especially pertinent for the people who prefer Halo Combat Evolved. I'll get to the whole time to kill.
So the whole time to kill thing, like he was saying, the faster time to kill is going to mean more players can just kill anybody. There's not that much skill expression in regards to Halo. Now, if you look at stuff like Counter-Strike or Valorant, where the time to kill is, you know, as soon as they put the reticle on your head or whatever, like it's also very low. But the difference is, you know, you only get one life. It's like per round or whatever. And it's just a different game altogether. There's different things to take into consideration with each game. And the longer time to kill, which is, you know, right here, is going to skew for a more, or at least from Halo, I would imagine it's the time to kill is really weird. A longer time to kill isn't necessarily always better, but it's just going to favor like the more skilled player, essentially, because they can keep their reticle on the target longer. And you know, with regards to it being Halo.
Kill ordeal. But first, I need to understand why devs even do this. I mean, I can understand why developers listen to pros. Esports.
Well, them listening to pros is here and there, but they're the devs. They have to figure this shit out, you know? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I just want to play a game that feels fun. You know? I don't need to know the inner workings of a phone to be able to use a phone. But, you know, somebody did have to make all those little solders and, you know, wires and shit in all those little circuits and whatever for me to just be like, swipe up, swipe down, press button, you know?
is huge now. It's a phenomenon. Every developer wants their multiplayer game to be an esport. It gives a perpetual feedback loop of interest. More people hear about the game through pro events.
This is true.
More people play the game. Pro events become bigger due to more players. More people hear about the game through pro events. More people play the game. Pro events become bigger due to more players. More players hear through pro events. So on and so forth. Here's the issue. You can't force a game to be an esport. You can't make it a professionally played game. There is one key ingredient that every professionally played game has: popularity.
How popular it is. And this is also true of like regular stick and ball sports, like football, basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever. It's because those things are popular, meaning a bunch of people can play them and have access to them. That's what makes it competitive, you know?
And I think people mistake the cause and effect here. Games are popular and people want to play.
But the thing with like video games is it's I don't know, it's weird. What makes a video game popular is the game just being a good game to begin with, regardless of like the balancing or whatever, and how it feels. Not everybody is gonna have access to like a computer, a console, a TV, a monitor, whatever. So you already like narrow your audience just by that bullet point alone. You know, what do you need to play basketball? You need a basketball and a basketball court. You know, that's pretty common in parks. What do you need to play soccer? A soccer ball in like 2 goals. You know, that's pretty common. All you need is like a field, you know? The barrier to entry is like a huge thing.
Them before they become esports. It's a prerequisite to being an esport. Look at how many games lend themselves really poorly to competitive gaming in terms of, say, their balance. And yet, they've had tournaments with cash prizes. People tried to make Minecraft into an actual esport. People play Minecraft's awful
crazy.
PvP. There are Roblox minigames that people tried to make into an esport. There have been many Fortnite tournaments, and this stuff gets viewed.
Understandably, you can make a sport out of anything. You know, there's competitive juggling, for Christ's sake, all right? There's competitive yo-yo. There's competitive ping pong, badminton, you know? If you look at all like the secondary and tertiary sports in the Olympics, it's very revealing on the barrier to what is and is not considered competitive, all right?
Viewed by millions of people on streams and in videos. Popularity begets competition. Having a pro team consult on the development of Halo 5 is not going to make it more competitively viable. I do want to note that the pro players working on Halo 5 did complain that 343 weren't really...
Like, imagine if, like, let's say you have the sport of darts, for instance. What if they decided to make darts 2? All right, now, boom, you have darts 2. You know, that thing where you're throwing all the little needles or whatever at the board. Let's say the makers of darts 2 consulted with only professional players and said, oh, what would be good? What could we make different about darts 2 to differentiate it enough from darts 1? You know, do we make the material harder so the more skillful like dart thrower can throw like, you know, not only precise but also with enough like force to like impact it, like the thing or whatever? Do you make the areas smaller? Like what are you talking about? Do we have like randomly just like put this board on like a rotating wheel, so not only are you trying to hit the, what do you call it, the triple 20 or whatever, now that it rotates around or whatever, now it's like, what are we trying to do?
Taking their feedback into consideration, or at least they'd force their own opinions on them. 343 was insisting on changes which the pros really didn't agree with. Things like placement of cover or weapons on the map, things like that. I mean, that seems to be 343's motto, honestly. Do it even if no one likes it. So given this, the point of this video isn't to pin the failings of developers onto pro players who consult them and give them feedback.
No, it's not the pro players' fault. They're just doing their thing. They think it's fun. Like, oh my God, the developers want to talk to me. Oh my God. No, it's the developers' fault. It's their game. They choose what to do with it. They are the ultimate final decision.
Many poor choices are done against their wishes. However, many poor developer choices are still done with esports in mind, even if the actual competitive players themselves hate those choices. So I think designing for both new players and for pros is a poor way to do things. Bungie multiplayer lead Max Hoberman released his documentation for Halo 3's online experience, all public on his Twitter earlier this year. One thing I thought was interesting to note was how it builds a profile of the average player.
Didn't certain fighting games try to do this? Like have like some sort of like different, like a button scheme? I think, what was it? Was it Marvel versus Capcom 3 and like Ultimate? Didn't they have two different button schemes or whatever, where it was like simple and like regular? So on regular, which is like the quote unquote normal way to play, where it was like light, medium, heavy, and then special, and then you had like two more buttons like underneath, and then you had like two more buttons, you know, on like an arcade arc, button arc or whatever. And that was it. That was like the normal way to play. But on simple, you know, was the thing that you tried to like, you put simple on because you wanted to like show your mom how to play like a fighting game, and she could, you know, just sit there and spam buttons and do combos and whoop your ass and feel good about it, you know? It's the new player experience. You just put it on simple.
It seems everything was set up around this proverbial average player. The ranking system was designed for the experience of the average player. That's the middle of the bell curve. The average player got a good mix of tough matches, easy matches, and decently challenging matches. The skill-based matchmaking system was set up specifically for this purpose. Now, obviously, pros aren't very fond of modern skill-based matchmaking. You hear streamers constantly...
So the thing with skill-based matchmaking is most people are fine with skill-based matchmaking and sweating their dick off on a ranked playlist. Nobody really has a problem with that. The issue with SBMM is it being in like public matches when you're just trying to like relax and do whatever. That's the issue. And also the skill-based matchmaking affecting the game, you know, where it actively reduces your accuracy and damage or whatever.
Baby whining and bitching about it everywhere, like complete MLG man-children. First of all, skill-based matchmaking is a misleading term because it implies the existence of non-skill-based matchmaking. There is no such thing. Ever since matchmaking was invented in Halo 2, the point of it, the whole point, was to match people of similar skill levels.
Yes, but Halo 2 didn't exclusively have matchmaking. The matchmaking was only on the rank playlist, not like random pubs.
Now you see, when I look at these skill-based matchmaking complaints, they just complain about the system altogether. I don't expect Call of Duty fans to know much about game design. But I don't know of a matchmaking system in a game that doesn't group people based on skill. Maybe Match.com or Tinder, which matches you based on your bank account instead. There is, however, a difference in how modern matchmaking systems are implemented. Going back to those Hoberman docs, Halo 3 used a heavily modified version of the ELO system named True Skill. In Halo 3, the goal wasn't to assign you a skill group as quickly.
Okay, I've never seen any of these or whatever, so I have no idea. But let me see. I've explained the mechanics in excruciating detail. It was designed to grind. TM. So, like, right up here. I don't know what it was designed to grind. I don't know what he means by this. Like, he would need to, like, go whatever. Halo 3 used a modified true skill system designed to roughly mimic Halo 2. Your visible rank, which was also used for matchmaking, was the low end of the TS probability range, not the middle, as they say. Okay, so for Halo 3, they used whatever symbol you had, your little emblem, that was on the bottom side. You know, because sometimes, you know, you could like pop off on a match and be like, oh yeah, that feels good, or whatever. But, you know, most skill expression is usually there's a mean where you're chilling at, and then sometimes you pop off, and then sometimes you just suck at. TS probably range, not the middle, as they say intended. Then we manually drastically slowed down TS convergence. Okay, so TS true scale convergence. So the probability range, your lowest and highest statistical skill, shrunk very slowly. Ta-da! A 1 to 50 system where everyone starts at the bottom. I thought this was very clever at the time. I agonized over a solution for months before landing on this idea.
As possible, you had to climb up to your skill bracket. That was the ranking and leveling system, all in one. What this meant is that you'd get more of a diversity of matches. You'd be more likely to end up playing both with and against better and worse players. There was, however, an issue. It was harder for people in higher ranks to find matches. This was because the population had a downward curve for rank distribution.
This is not only true for video games, this is also true for all skills in life in general. You know, most people will be over here, and far fewer people will be on this side. It's just, it is what it is. But the thing with video games is when you try to find a match over here, it takes agonizingly a long time to try to do that. Whereas maybe even like here, in like whatever this is, like 30, it's probably like instant. And probably to some degree, like maybe to 40. But like once you start grinding over here, it's like, it's really tough to find a match.
Rather than a bell curve, modern implementations of matchmaking are ultimately designed to fix this.
Oh god, you're using it, what is this, Apex? Or wait, no, this isn't Apex. This is, what is this? Platinum Diamond Onyx? I have no idea what game this is.
So even though many high-end and pro players hate modern implementations of SBMM, they were, at least in part, designed for those people at the extremities, for the people at the higher ends of play. Designing for the average player seems obvious, and I'm not saying devs don't consider the average player, but I believe priorities can get lost in the midst of development. When people are in too deep, and there isn't a strong guiding vision, oftentimes the obvious priorities can get obscured. For example, you can become so obsessed with accessibility that you forget to make a remotely challenging or interesting game. For example,
so you gain accessibility but lose interest or engagement or whatever. So let's say you find a match instantly, and then there's two things that are going to happen. You're either a really good player and you're just going to shit on everybody, and you're either going to be really engaged or not engaged, or you're like maybe a decent player and maybe it'll be like 50-50 again, whether you are engaged or are not engaged, or you're going to be like a lower end player and you're probably not going to be, you're probably going to be like really engaged if you're grinding like a rank system or whatever, and you're just like trying and you're starting out and you're new, you know, you're going to be like in there, but you know, you're just going to be getting shit on or whatever. So
making your own protagonist spoil every puzzle within 30 seconds of arriving.
Just need a rib from that fang horn. Just need a rib from that. Just need a rib from. Just need a rib from. Just need a rib. Just need a rib. Just need a rib. Just need a rib.
Whoa.
Charger herd.
Same with the hyper focus on competitiveness or esports. You end up removing the fun. No randomness, no physics stuff, no getting splattered by witches' cones. This one Halo Infinite update shows me just how out of touch 343 still is. Hampering physics-based interactions for the sake of consistency in competitive modes is just missing the point so hard. Halo is literally about physics-based gameplay. Prepare for a tangent while I rant about this stuff.
Go for it.
The reduction of these dynamic, random, or unpredictable features is done for the sake of consistency. Consistency is an important thing in competitive games.
Okay, so he's doing his rant thing, but I'm just going to interject. Like, again, I'm going to reference my little Super Smash Melee thing. Why is it seemingly against the law to allow players to have different game modes for different playlists, you know, with regards to FPSs, like multiplayers, you know? And you could probably maybe extend this to like MMOs whenever you're grouping up with someone, grouping up with like other people or whatever to like do content. But I'm just going to like keep to FPS. What is so bad about giving the player the choice of what rule set they want to turn on and off? So let's say if you want to grind a ranked playlist for your game, that the developers are going to have a set amount of rules for this is ranked. This is what ranked is, all right? It's probably going to have a very low amount of RNG and a very high amount of consistency. Now, for the sake of simplicity, RNG is fun, consistency not so fun. All right, which is more or less where we're going. Give players the option to either play what they want and turn on the rules, or let them play what they want over here and just, you know, go crazy.
If there's one thing that pros hate, it's RNG, unpredictability, things out of their control, taking agency from the players and placing it into, say, a random system, like a random number generator. Things like that do hamper skill expression. It can reduce the oft-quoted skill gap. But here's the thing, there is more to a game than skill. There must be some hidden element out of the player's control.
Yeah, it's called fun.
Some hidden variable, element X. If your average shooter game were perfectly consistent, it'd be a multiplayer aim trainer. Some degree of variability is a
little does he know those exist.
necessity to enable depth, even if it does occasionally feel unfair. Some weapons should be inaccurate. Some weapons should be more powerful than others. Some should be redundant. Some competitive players talk about removing.
Well, I don't think weapons should be like redundant. I think it's good to have like a good variety of weapons. The redundancy of a weapon is probably subjective, but I'm not against having like alt fires and like different types of like aiming mechanics. You know, not every aiming mechanic, every gun has to be meta. I'm fine with like some things just being like off or whatever.
Things like weapon spread and reducing time to kill,
yeah.
So there is a more pure skill expression, which naturally must be more fun to watch. Low time to kill, good, right? But like there's more to
again, the time to kill is going to be specific to each type of game.
Fun and depth in games than just skill. There's more to skill and skill expression than just aim and movement in an FPS. I'll go back to the Halo example briefly. Many hardcore players prefer the individual expression and low kill times allowed by Halo 1 and 2 to Halo 3, which it said focuses more on teamwork and reduces the individual emphasis. I've never really heard an argument as to why this is bad, or even not preferable. It's simply personal taste, which is fine, but not every game should be just about pure aim and skill expression. And it's not necessarily better for the average player. As evidenced by the sales and the popularity, It seems to me the game focused on teamwork should be the preferable direction. Basically what I'm saying is there should be more.
Again, this is all subjective, like skill expression, team dynamic, teamwork. This is going to be game specific. You know, him using the sales as an example of whether or not a game is popular enough is a good example. But if you have a game that is, you know, perfectly balanced or whatever and makes sense and allows for high skill expression, it's probably gonna do very bad in sales. Because most people suck at FPSs in general, you know. Whereas if you have a bunch of other things, where like that's that type of game, the fully balanced game. Whereas if you have like a lot of take a game where there's like a lot of RNG and a lot of fun in it. There's like things like sprint, aim down sight, a bunch of like movement, different types of weapons, a lot of RNG factors. Then it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a bunch of fun in this game, you know. And the sales are gonna be like high as hell on that game. Just because the sales are extremely high doesn't necessarily make it, you know, a completely balanced, competitive, game, you know?
More elements in play than raw movement and aim skill, and I mean ones that will affect the average player. I've seen this push in virtually every multiplayer first-person shooter game. People at the upper echelons of play want a more hardcore, focused, consistent experience where they have more agency. That's a more pure test of skill. I've got the perfect game for you folks who want a hardcore, pure test of skill. It's called Rat's Instagib. One-shot kills, no inaccuracy, pure movement, and pure skill. I don't want to shit on it because it is fun, but it could never really be an esport. Why is that? It allows for awesome plays, for cool movement that allows you to outplay other players, and for a single person to completely dominate, to show amazing feats of skill. Perhaps it's because people want more than just wanking about how good you are at clicking. And I want to say the necessity of randomness and unpredictability doesn't just exist in first-person shooters. In Age of Empires 2, the longest running, still living, RTS, each match is based around reacting to random spawns. You need to find all the materials around your base as quickly as possible. Imagine if the gold and the boars spawned in the same spot every time. The game would be a lot less interesting. And obviously, at this point in the video, I'm aware that no pros complain about this. Like I said, I went on a bit of a tangent. I just feel like I had to go on that tangent about consistency and unpredictability in games.
I mean, this is also true of probably real sports too. So, in a vacuum, there's probably a lot of consistency in sports. So what's the variable? The human skill, you know? It's mostly like the human skill or whatever, but there's like external things like is the field slippery? Is it dry out? Is there a lot of wind going on? Am I facing the sun or am I facing away from the sun? You know, a bunch of other things. So there's always probably going to be some acceptable level of RNG. It's just how much of it is acceptable. And that's going to depend from person to person. You know, in a video game, there's this thought where it's a video game. It's supposed to be 100% accurate at all times, blah, blah, blah. And like, there's not going to be like any RNG. That's the best competitive experience. Well, that's not really true.
I had to cover it at some point. Basically speaking, games need to have some inconsistency and some imbalance. Cutting that stuff just for the sake of competitive play is a misstep. I
actually can't play football when it's snowing. I can't play when it's raining. I can't play golf if the sun is directly in my eyes. I'm just not playing. It's a bad game. Terrible game. Sun's always in my eyes. Can't play. Horrible. The wind is always against me. I lose like 50 yards whenever I go to drive. It's terrible. Horrible experience. Atrocious.
Also need to mention that obviously the game should still be largely consistent. You don't want unpredictability, imbalance, and inconsistency to dominate your game, lest it devolve into gambling. There is obviously a balance to be had. Reticle Bloom in Halo Reach was terrible and brought in far too much unpredictability into the average shooting engagement. It's easy to see these fuck-ups and try to overcorrect. I did bring up Age of Empires 2 for a moment there. An RTS. It's relevant because I was actually inspired by another video I saw on real-time strategies, why the next RTS game will fail. I wanted to share the video because unless you're an RTS fan, you probably didn't watch it, but you should, because it seems like almost every point he brought up applies to first-person shooters as well. I will say I even brought this up in a comment. For example, the devs listening to a small sample size of pro players and focusing on multiplayer, especially competitive 1v1s. In the video, he showed that the majority of RTS players in his sample size actually favor campaigns. Likewise, about a third of Halo players just play campaign. Another third play campaign and multiplayer. The final third is people who play just one mode. That is, Forge, custom games, big team battle. Competitive players only make up a fraction of that third. If you watched the marketing for Halo 5, you'd get the idea that competitive players are 95% of the player base.
Yeah.
There was an
Which is the wrong move. Trying to put a spotlight on any type of crowd in your game is probably a bad idea.
old piece of common knowledge that Halo was played only for the multiplayer, that's what people got Halo for. But that just wasn't true at all. It's the same with games like Call of Duty. People actually do play those campaigns.
Yeah.
And people are actually disappointed when they suck or when they remove them. They are a
Yeah, the Call of Duty campaigns are, in general, like, really good. You know, it's a movie experience. You're a fucking super soldier. You can aim perfectly. You can sprint. You know, you're doing all this, like, crouch sliding, dolphin diving, whatever, you know. The game makes you feel good while you're playing the campaign.
notable amount of the player base. Another point from that video was the removal of spectacle. Basically, cool shit. Broken shit. Again, this crosses over perfectly. Think about that whole consistency / unpredictability spiel I just went on. How many times do devs remove fun things for the sake of balance? Physics interactions.
Again, I'm always going to go back to have your ranked playlist rules and your public playlist rules.
Getting splattered by
You don't have to remove the OP shit in just regular pubs. You can have things in the game that are purely just for fun, and it's fine.
cones. Besides that, there was the section on user-generated content, dev tools, and devs neglecting custom games. I just gotta say, 343 thought Forge was so unimportant that they pushed it back 9 months after launch. And
Yeesh.
even then, it's only going to be coming out in beta. It seems like a lot of these issues are all systemic and Microsoft-wide at the very least. Just in the last year, it's affected Halo Infinite and Age of Empires 4. So how do we solve this issue? I'll list a few of my ideas how. For one, do not focus strongly on the competitive experience.
True.
Do not make their experience central to your design. Do not put them front and center. On the contrary, do not focus strongly on the new player experience. It's of course a consideration, but shouldn't dominate the design. Place your main attention on the average player, people who log in regularly, but not for hours a day. Try to make it so the game is most enjoyable for those people.
And do not, for the love of you, put in pay-to-win bullshit. Cosmetics is fine, but yes, you know, back in the day, to some degree, I don't even want to have like microtransactions or cosmetics in the game, because I just want to be able to grind X cosmetic, you know, get like 1,000 headshots, get like some skin, you know, with this gun, get 100, I don't know, shotgun melees, get a badass skin, you know, put the cool stuff in the base game. Don't let me just buy it, all right?
Allow some degree of unpredictability, especially if it's cool. If
You want players to come back to your game day after day, put shit in the game that they want to grind for, you know? Don't just be on like a shelf and be like, oh, I'll pay $20 for that skin. I'll pay $50. Oh, that's blue? Oh, that's blue. I gotta pay $50 for that skin. Oh, that's gold? Oh, that's $100 for that one. That's gold. Oh my God.
If it has some spectacle, adhere to the rule of cool, please. Within reason, of course.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be complete chaos. Allow some more variability in skill for matchmaking. Do not make the skill groupings so tight that they feel suffocating. Please add tools for creating custom content. You'd have to be a complete idiot to look at Minecraft.
The whole do not make skill groups as tight. I don't know. I'm probably on the fence on that one because like if you're grinding like the ranked playlist, I'm fine with having a bunch of people on my team that's like a similar skill, and I'm fine versing people that's at my similar skill. You know, maybe this is like a gradient type bullet point. I don't know. I'm fine with like tight matchmaking or whatever, but I don't know.
Roblox, Skyrim, and
Because so for that reason, I'm gonna use Apex as the example. Apex used like the Big Brother type matchmaking, where in seasons before, I think 16 or whatever, and even up in onto like 16, it's like as long as you are perceived as the good player on the team, the game will just give you two people that aren't as good as you. All right, so that's what Apex did. So that could be perceived as, I don't know, loose matchmaking, which does not feel good for the one person on you know, the one good person in the team. Whereas for the two people, they're like, oh, I'm getting carried. This is awesome. I feel so good. Blah blah blah. It's like, oh, at the expense of one person. Okay, so what's the incentive there? The good players or the bad players are gonna gain up enough skill or whatever, and then pretty soon they're gonna be that one player that's really good. And then if you get into enough matches like that, at least on Apex, where you're the one good player and then you have the two not so good players, you're just gonna want to stop playing. So that's my thoughts on it.
Gmod and think that it's not worthwhile. These are, of course, just my suggestions. It's not like you should never listen to pros or never listen to the noobs. The best advice would be to allow for variation. Provide a range of game modes, ways to play. Design for the omnivores.
Yes.
The people who play a range of different activities. That's how Destiny is designed, to get you to play multiple different activities. And it has one of the most dedicated fan bases out there, who would eat up literally anything Bungie produces. So really, you can listen to the pros. Sometimes. But just don't let them have too much influence.
Yeah.
Lest you should lose your way. Thank you so very much for watching. I ask you to subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.
Good stuff. Good video, man. I like this. That was a good video. 100%, dude. Okay, let me see. The pros are supposed to be good at the game, not change the game so they can be good at it. Yeah, I mean, he mentioned this before with like talking about, you know, eliminating all the RNG factors and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I miss when games like COD were just fun and chill to play with friends, or even Apex at launch when everyone was just trying everything out and having a blast. Yeah, the funnest time for a game is, you know, obviously when it first drops. You know, when it first drops, everyone's trying to play it. Everyone's trying to figure out the meta or whatever, so they can just shit on everybody. You know, this is true not only for FPSs, but like single player games. What's the good weapon? What's the good stat? For MMOs, what's the good class? What's the good class combo or whatever? You know, that's the most fun part, the experimental stage, I would say. But you know, overall, I think this is a great video. Definitely 100% agree. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, see ya.